Hi, it's Joe Hashi with
All
another
right.
episode of the Level Up Your Gym podcast. And today I am joined by a complete stranger, Drew Massey from Game Time Sports out in Tennessee. Now, Drew and I are legitimate strangers. If you have been following on the podcast, I had Andy McCloy, who runs a great facility down south for training athletes on. And at the end of each episode, I ask if there's someone else in the industry that they've learned from and they admire. And Andy was all about Drew. So I reached out to Drew and he agreed to do one of these. We don't know each other from stalking Drew on Facebook. I appreciate him, but I also hate him because I see he's out in Tennessee and they could just train freestyle while we're in bubble suits here in New York. So it's going to be love-hate, but I'm looking forward to the podcast. Drew, welcome aboard.
Hey, thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate you having me on. And you probably don't know me, but I will give you a little bit of insight. We are definitely strangers. He's not lying about that. But you were an integral, if I could talk today, part of I was in Vince Gabriel's 6-week surge. And you obviously do a lot of work with that. So I know exactly who you are and how well known you are in the industry and what you're able to do. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for having me on the podcast, but also for a lot of the insights and little nuances of running fitness business that helped us out. We were in that surge we were in it right in the middle of COVID. So we were in the longest surge Vince has ever had. But what you do there at your facilities and things like that, it's very impressive, and I've learned a lot from you. So it's an honor. I truly mean that to be somebody that you would want to have on this podcast. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate the kindness. And so I appreciate the background that we will be talking about some cool gym stuff. And if you've known me from Surge, you'll probably see me bust some chops because I did that in the comments all the time just to rile up other gym owners to make sure that they're being accountable. Just like we chase our members around and be accountable. The hardest people to keep accountable are ourselves and what we need to do for our companies. So I invited Drew on to share a couple of tips on what he's picked up over the years. And Drew, I'm going to turn it over to you. What's one thing that a new gym owner or a gym owner that's in that year 1 to 3 should be thinking about?
I've got, like I said, 3 things that obviously ask about that when you invited me on. And one of the things that I think we don't talk about as much as we should, because we feel like it's probably already a part of our product, is what creates a great 60-minute session. And that's a huge part because that's basically your product as a gym owner, right? Like you're selling a service. So if that service is not a good quality service, then you're going to have trouble. You're going to be chasing people all the time because your retention rates are going to be lower and things of that nature. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things that make a good quality session. That run a good quality session. So those are some of the things that, and then I've got 2 other things that we can talk about. One, I had to improvise because Andy stole mine.
I mean, I can't swear in my own podcast, but I wish I could.
Right. Absolutely. Nah, he didn't, but his be a local legend was very similar to something that I was going to talk about. So I've got another one for that. And then one thing, the third thing that I want to talk about today is something that I need to remind myself of more. So I feel like if I put it out on the podcast, then now I have to be a little bit more, since I'm the one that has suggested that to be. So we can go ahead and get started with how to run a good session if you want to jump in there.
Heck yeah, let's dive right in.
All right. Perfect. Number 1, I think the best thing that you can do, and this is an analogy that I got from an old boss. I started my career with the YMCA, believe it or not. I worked for them for a long time and worked my way up to becoming a faculty member with the YMCA of USA, going around and holding trainings at other facilities. But one of my mentors told me, you want people to walk into your facility and feel kind of like you're hosting a party. And I don't mean that by, killer, getting wild and all that. But if you think about any event that you've been to that has done well or that you've had a really good time at, your host had everything set up when you got there. There was very little guesswork to what you were going to do when you got there. And while you were there, you were introduced to other people. You had a good time while you were there. And then at the end, when you left, there was a system. It almost was like a system to everything. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, number one, have a roster, take a role, see the people that are in your class. If you have a software system that are there, then you obviously want to use that. And the reason that I emphasize that, and that seems very simple, but I think people don't do that as often as they should. Number one, it lets you know the first name of everybody that's in that class, that's in that session. And the best thing people can hear all day long is the sound of their own name. And so if you're walking around using all the things that we do, hey, man, what's up, dude? Hey there, girl,
Hey,
like
boss.
that. Yeah. What's up, big dog? Like things like that you do that we know, that we innately do as humans. But if you know everybody's name, then that just gives you such a large advantage over their experience at your facility. So that's one of the first things that I tell our coaches is learn everybody's first name. And that means we have to take a role. We have to take a roster. We have to know who's here. The second thing that we talk about, if we're going to teach this like a party, like we're hosting an event or we're hosting a party, make sure the facility is set up 15 minutes before anybody else walks in. Like you don't want to be setting up the facility while other people are coming in, because they may have questions. They may have like, hey, I need to change my number on my credit card today. And you may have to run over there and do that really quickly. And from a member standpoint, think about how much better you look as a coach when everything is already set up and you don't have to run around and try to find this piece of equipment to go over there or here or do whatever. So we want to make sure that everything that we're going to use is set up at least 15 minutes before our first guest walks into the facility. And the other thing that's huge that I don't think people pay that attention to is logistics matters. The logistics and the flow of your session 100% matters, especially if you are trying to get a lot of people through your facility. And one of the facilities that comes to mind when I am talking about this is, Mike Boyle's probably done this better than anybody as far as how to get a ton of people through a facility in a short amount of time and give everybody a great experience. And logistics matters. And one of the examples that he uses often in some of the things that he talks about is, if you've got 2 squat racks and you've got 20 people, guess what you're not doing during that session? You ain't squatting because, you're just going to bottleneck. People are going to wait on equipment. They're not going to feel like they're getting the workout and things like that. So make sure that each exercise has its own place that uses its own equipment, and members know exactly where they're going from one exercise to the other. And I hate to say it kind of like this, but you want this to have a very factory-like assembly line feel to your sessions, especially if you're running small groups or you're running bigger groups. And right now I understand that that's a little bit more difficult with some of the restrictions that we're under. But even in the same way, like that's a really good way to make sure people are staying with the same equipment. If I have one exercise over here and then I have another exercise over here, it's another way that I can keep people apart in a manner that which is safe for everybody. So logistics is huge when you're designing your programs and when you're designing your sessions. And so things that you can do really early on is set everything up and make sure there's a logistical flow to the way that your gym is designed or the way that your exercises are going to go, can set somebody up for a really, really, really good experience. And then after that, it's going to be up to the coach, right? We want to make sure that the coach is demonstrating everything every time. Demo. One of the things that I heard a long time ago is I don't have to, and this was a college coach. He's like, hey, look, I don't have to power clean 315 pounds anymore. I've just got to make the bar look really, really good. So I think that is huge. Like people are there and they obviously have different different learning styles. People are going to want to hear what you have to say. Some people are going to need to watch what you do. And then other people are just going to have to try it out, right? Like those are the three learning styles. So we want to make sure that our demonstrations are very clear, very precise. We want to make sure that what we're doing and our demonstrations, we want to demonstrate the way we want it performed. And then also we want to make sure that when people are doing their own thing, that they're doing what we're actually demonstrating when they start to kind of feel it out for themselves. And as a coach, you need to take responsibility for the way that your people perform the exercises that you're doing. And if something doesn't look quite right, you need to be able to go over there and jump in there and maybe help cue or correct them, do some of the things that will help assist them. And that's going to give them a better experience because they feel like you care about them as an individual and they're just not part of that small group or part of that large group. Oh, like he noticed that I was letting this happen on this exercise. So he came over. One of the things that I like to hear when members are out there talking is, man, Coach Taylor's seems like he's always looking at me. Or yeah, he's everywhere. Or I try to hide from him when I'm trying to go down in weight or something like that, and I can't ever get away from him because he's always around or things like that. So those are the kind of compliments that I like to hear from our members when we're talking about running a good session. And one of the other thing about running a good session that we talk about is your voice is huge as a coach. The number one thing that I get a lot of times with new coaches that are running sessions for the first time is they're talking to a group like you and I are talking on this podcast. And when you are in charge of people want to know the leader is, people want to know who the coach is, and your voice is your biggest weapon in doing that. So use your voice, project your voice, make sure that people can hear you, make sure that you're not mumbling. That's another one. When coaches are not quite sure of themselves, they'll tend to mumble through exercises and things like that. And we want clear, voice inflection and things like that so that we know exactly what we're doing. And the fifth thing that I tell coaches all the time is be an active coach. Your job is not over. Like today, for instance, in our workout session, we're pairing incline barbell bench press, double kettlebell front squat, and a med ball core exercise. So once I get the whole group together and I tell them that we're doing 4 sets and we're doing 12 reps and then 10 reps and then 8 reps and 6 reps, and then we're moving up weight every set, and I explain those 3 exercises, my coaching job is not done at that point. My coaching job starts at that point. Because then when all of my people disperse and my group's going over here to bench press and my other group's going over here to squat and then my other group's going over here to do their core work, then I have to be in all 3 of those places almost simultaneously. So you should, if you had a pedometer on, there should be no question that you're getting, your 10,000 steps during a coaching session, just because you're so active and you want to watch everybody at least do a couple reps of each exercise. And if you have, right now we're limiting everybody, between 8 and 12 people per group. We had like 10, I think, this morning. If you do it the right way, I can see all 10 of those people do at least 3 to 5 reps of each exercise in that group. If you've got your setup, if your logistics are done right, if you're an active coach and you've demonstrated well and you've used your voice. So those are 5 things that I think really help set the tone for a great session. And everybody knows exactly what they're doing, and they have, again, clear definitions of where they're going and how those things should be performed.
I really like the rep rule. We have one in our trainer's handbook, which is 3 reps and a comment on every exercise you prescribe, because when you get someone that's been there a while and knows it, they might not get the same level of interaction, and they're not thinking necessarily coaching, but they're thinking interaction. It could be great job. I like how you're keeping your elbow a little tighter on that press. It could be something as simple as a compliment. It doesn't always have to be a correction, but it's 3 reps and a comment for everything prescribed that we give out. And if you two up me, you said 5 reps. So I like that, Drew. And I like that you use the different teaching styles. As a former high school teacher, I like that you put some serious thought into how you're interacting with the members. But I love the analogy of hosting a party. Because if I ever go to a seminar or go speaking, and you arrive and they got your name card out and they got everything ready for you, and they're standing at the desk like they're waiting for your arrival, it feels much more special than myself as more of an introvert who you're not quite sure where to go. It feels almost weird, and you're thinking like, how do I get out of this right away?
No, you're exactly right. I think like those kinds of things that you just talked about really take that intimidation factor off of, a new person coming. And one of the best compliments that I think that you can get as a coach is if even an older client loves the way that you demonstrate everything every time. Everything's the same. You always explain things. You don't take for granted that I'm looking out there and I've got 9 people that have been here for 3 or 4 years, and so I kind of do lackluster demos and things like that. If you treat every session like everybody's a beginner, you'll very rarely go wrong, because again, that intimidation factor of somebody new coming into your facility is much greater than you would anticipate. I use this as an example. I just started mountain biking in May. All right. I mountain biked a little bit out of college and just picked it back up. And when I went out to the local, I live really close to a local track that's a really popular track in Tennessee, so it draws a lot of mountain bikers around. When I would get out there and I was brand new and I didn't know what I was doing and I don't know how to navigate some of those terrain, it was very intimidating because I was the new guy. And it, that comes an internal feel like you don't want to hold up anybody that's better than you, right? Like you don't want to feel like you're holding up the group, but also you don't want to feel like the new person, but you don't know certain things. So if those things can be taken care of on the front end, it really, really takes a lot of that intimidation factor away from a beginner or somebody that's coming as a guest, maybe from out of town, or that's trying out your gym for the first time.
So here's a follow-up question on all that, Drew, is how do you get your employees, or how do you empower them to live that kind of coaching lifestyle and hold them accountable, but also elevate them to perform at a high level? What are some suggestions you have to get your staff on board with a high level of service during that 60 minutes?
So one of the things that we do is obviously you want to meet with your coaching. So we have a coaching meeting, not just a staff meeting. It's a coaching meeting. So we want to go over things like, how do you handle a new beginner? And we'll go through different scenarios. Like, what do you want to do if a new person comes into class? Well, then I want to make sure if you come into my facility for the first time, I'm going to say, hey, Joe, I'm Coach Drew. I'm going to be your coach today. And then I'm going to tell you, hey, what's your experience with exercise? And if you tell me like, oh, I'm my own gyms and I do this and thing, then I'm still going to look at you and say, okay, great. I haven't coached you before, so I'm going to coach you like you've never worked out before. And I'm going to be in front of you as the new person in class. I'm going to do all my demonstrations in front of you, so you almost feel like you're getting a one-on-one. So we want to go through these scenarios as a staff so that everybody's on the same team and on the same page. We're actually having one Wednesday before everybody goes out for Thanksgiving break to reiterate some of these things, because as staff turns over and people leave and things like that, then you need to go back over some of these things. And it's always good to get staff that have been here for a long time just some refreshers and oh yeah, like that's right, I need to be doing that more, or hey, you always pick up these little nuggets. So getting together and not just going over like procedures, but going over like your coaching procedures and going over like, what does this scenario look like? What if there's a new person that walks in that has a boot on their ankle? What do you do with that? Like, how does that affect your warm up? Like, you have to go over a lot of these scenarios, because as you know, as well as anybody, if it can happen in your gym, it's probably gonna happen in your gym at some point or time or the other. So my big thing for our coaches, and to give them, they have free reign because they know our progressions and regressions. They know if some comes in as a beginner, they're not going to start them. If somebody came in today just on the exercises that we described earlier, they know they're not going to start somebody on a double kettlebell front squat. They're going to start somebody with an assisted body weight squat. Then they're going to move them through the progression of body weight squat. And then on their third set, if they look good, they might give them a dumbbell to hold in the goblet position if everything went, according to plan. So we try not to rush that. But the reason that all of our staff know that is because we go through that and we work through those different scenarios, and they know that they have the power to change an exercise completely and work the same tissue or do some of the similar movements because of the communication that we have as a staff.
You've picked a smart order to go through these, because one of the most important things is to not fill a leaky bucket. So you're talking about tightening everything up, have it running right, so then it's marketable, and then becoming a local legend, which I've heard only from Andy McCloy that you're stealing. So what's your second tip now that we got things running well, staff's on point?
Yep. So your second thing, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, your maybe a little bit of a marketing tip is your best marketing tool is right in the middle of your gym. And I don't think a lot of people realize it. Your marketing is your members, or your members are your marketing, if you wanted to have a nice little, kind of cliche line like that. But what I mean by that is not just word of mouth. And I'm going to credit you and Vince for kind of drilling this into my own head, is that word of mouth is great. And every time you tell people, oh yeah, you can bring a friend anytime, go out and tell everybody about it. That's word of mouth. That's going to get you, pretty far. It got us through the first year, to be quite honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to have a direct line, a direct system of how to use your members as a marketing tool. And one of the things that we implemented after going through that surge was that black metal card. So what I mean by that is that every member that joins us as a facility, they get kind of a welcome gift that has their MyZone heart rate monitor in it. It has a T-shirt in it, and then it has kind of apps that are useful training at our facility. It has the MindBody app. It has the the MyZone app and directions. And if they're going to track nutrition, here's the apps that we suggest and things of that nature. But also in that packet is a black metal card. And in that black metal card, we ask the new member, hey, give this card to somebody that you may want to work out with, or somebody that that might like our facility or that might like our gym. And so it automatically lets them give away something. Somebody needs a last minute birthday gift or something like that, they can kind of put that in there, but it gives that person a free month of membership with us, an unlimited access membership with us. So when they come in, they hand the black metal card back to us and say, hey, I got this from Joe. Then we say, okay, great. And we set them up on a 1 month free trial. And if that member joins at the end of their trial month, then obviously they get a black card to give away. But Joe, you as a member, we give you a little bit of something for just referring somebody to us. So use your members as a marketing, and have a system for that, and have a way to use your members as your marketing tool, because they're the best billboard that you can buy. And because they're in your facility every day, they know your staff, they know your procedures. And one of the best things that we just did recently, and I understand this is a little bit specific to us, we're right across the street from the Murray County Election Commission. So when early voting was going on in the nation, there was everybody in Murray County had to come to the Murray County Election Commission to vote. So we just went out and said, we kind of got in the back of my truck. It was Taylor, my co-director's idea, to get me in the back of the truck with a megaphone. And we literally invited everybody in that was in line for voting and said, hey, for the next 21 days, we're running a 21-day free trial. If you want to come over after you vote, we'll be glad to get you set up on that. And that brought us, 8 or 10 new trials. But the thing that gave us some of that that insight were we had members that would come in and say, yeah, I was in line the other day, and like for 10 minutes, people were asking what that building was. And since I was a member, like I told them about the gym. And so we were like, okay, that's great. It kind of was one of those things that happened just kind of out of nowhere. And Taylor was smart enough to see the opportunity there. And then we kind of came up with a strategy to get that. But that brought us, between 8 and 12 leads that we would have never gotten had we not done that. But use your members as a marketing tool, because they're, like I said, they're the best billboard that you've got in your facility, and you don't even realize it.
There's a bunch we can talk about. The metal card's a perfect point of sale. Mine are silver because I went cheap. The black ones are like an extra $100. Drew, you're high rolling. You and Vince. Mine are silver metal cards, but they're metal because they stick out more. And for the people listening, it's about the size of a business card. You can imagine it just cut out of metal.
Sure.
And that's one way you can have your point of sale referrals, and it's a very effective way. There's a lot of other ways that you should be implementing. And honestly, something, now that we're good friends, we've been talking for 20 minutes, something that fires me up about gym owners is that I could probably fill the Level Up Your Gym program that I run if I just said, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do Facebook ads. Everyone wants to spend big money on online marketing right now, social media marketing. It's flashy.
Sure.
But from a lot of experience, yeah, it goes up and down, but they're missing so much gold that's within their doors, their referrals, their reactivations, tracking why people are leaving. There's so much that they can do with community marketing that is really the groundwork and really the future of the industry as things ramp up. Facebook has been great for a while. It's getting a little bit tougher, but it wasn't around a decade ago. YouTube's been okay, up and down. Those things will come and go, but you need to get the rock solid plans like Drew's talking about right now. And if you don't happen to have the board of election across the street, you can do plenty out of your own facility. Here's a couple ideas. We did a drive-through trunk or treat for our kids. We had over 250 community members. We opened up the community, drive through our parking lot. They were getting candy and for the kids, free sessions for the parents. Almost the whole town came through because each of those 250 cars had 4 or 5 people in them to come through and do trick-or-treating. So something that our community wasn't really able to do otherwise. You could have a staging area for a local parade. The local Little League's doing something. Yeah, everyone can park in my parking lot. You don't have to wait for the opportunity to fall in your lap. You have to create it. And Drew's got some good framework that he went out and took big advantage of something like that. But you can make that too. So don't think, that doesn't pertain to me. There's plenty you can do.
You absolutely can. We do a lot with our local youth soccer association. There are 2 soccer clubs in our association, and we have great relationships with both of those. And that ended up bringing us a lot of their parents, but also a lot of our youth athletes, things like that come in the off season, just because we are out and about on Saturdays and at different events and things of that nature. So yeah, that just kind of happened to fall in our lap because the election commission was right across. But that was just because we are used to looking for those kinds of opportunities and seizing those opportunities when we know when they come up.
Even in about 30 minutes today, I run a local podcast for our brick and mortar we have 3 locations too. And I'll be interviewing a local running store where we'll share 3 tips about the local, how you can get fit. We'll send some people over to them for the holidays, but they also stage their Saturday runs out of our parking lot. They will send an email out for us to start the new year when there's the 5Ks in the area. And coming up in the spring in New York, people need places to train during the winter, especially runners. They can't get outside as much. They'll be sending people our way. So it's just a way to interact with the community and bring people in to your facility in a meaningful way. And the guy will give some great tips. We'll share about his stuff very generously, and he'll share about our stuff. And is really scalable, not compared to like, oh, I hope someone says nice things about me and I hope they bring in more members. You got to have a little bit of more fire underneath your britches to get moving.
Right. Absolutely. You can't wait for those things to happen. Not just going to jump in your lap. You definitely have to go out there and grab that.
So right now we've got two great pieces, and I'll say it's a push with Andy's podcast. The third one can put you over the top on the better podcast episode, Drew. More value for our listeners. Let's see if you can bring
Right?
it
Here we
home.
go.
What's your third tip?
All right, here's my third tip. And I'll be honest, I stole this right out of a book that I was reading like anybody would. And it really hit home to me. And the reason that I'm going to put this over the top is because this is something that I need to look at our facility all the time because it's happened quite a few times. But the quote is this: "The genius can do anything, but does only one thing at a time." And I'll say that again. The genius has the ability to do anything, but does only one thing at a time. And I'll go ahead and explain that by, it's really easy in this industry to get your hand in a lot of pots. And you can get into a lot of different things really, really quickly. And all of a sudden you feel overwhelmed and you don't feel like you're doing anything very well. And when that starts to happen, it's probably because you're losing focus on what is the one, like, you need to get good at one thing first. And then once you're good at one thing and you have that going, then you can attack the next thing. And I think we get so eager, probably because it's our personality, but we get eager to, okay, I want to jump at this opportunity. I want to jump at this opportunity. I want to jump at this opportunity. And then you're doing all of those things at one time, but you're not doing any of those things very well. Whereas if you said, yes, like, this is an opportunity that I want to take advantage of, let's get this started. And then any other opportunities that come your way along that way, it might not be the right time for those. So you need to put those on the back burner and get really good at doing that one thing well first, and then do the next thing, and then do the next thing. Because you probably, like the quote says, you have the ability to do anything. But if you will take the time and do one thing really well first, then over the of a year, you're probably going to be doing multiple things very well versus a lot of the things only kind of well. And that is one of the things that I have to, one of the things in our administrative staff meeting that we ask a lot, that this question comes up a lot when opportunities, kind of arise and things like that, is, what's the best decision for game time? Is this the best decision for game time at this point? And based on that answer, lets us have a clearer understanding of kind of where we want to go. We know who we are. We know what we do well. And if an opportunity comes up that is maybe not something that may be interesting, but we kind of decide as a staff that that's not kind of where we want to put our eggs at that point, that's fine. We can say no to that, or we can put that on the back burner or whatever. And we need to focus more on doing one thing really, really well first before jumping into the next thing.
And that's even not that abstract. I think that's a perfect tip, because you hear a lot about, oh, I want to get multiple streams of income coming in for my business. And while I in theory believe in that, I more believe you should have one primary stream of income and then a lot of tributaries, like a lot of things that help support it. So ours is, we want to get people into our large group personal training. It's something that we do uniquely well, and it's like a personal training at a group fitness value is how we explain it. And everything else we do as a company supports that. If we have physical therapy, rent some space, well, we rent it to them because we want to get people into our large group personal training. Do we have cardio equipment that we let members use? Yes, because we want to get people more into our large group personal training. Do we have a recovery room? We tried it. We do something called a minimal viable product. Didn't work out that well. We weren't going to sell it individually. We cut it. Do we sell supplements? Not for 6 years. Now we sell them only to support people that get into our large group personal training. And I had the BPN co-founder on the supplement company we use, and we sell more product than any other gym in the country of theirs. And we don't even do it as a revenue stream. We do it for member retention, member longevity, member reactivation. Just like the My Zones is another example. We use those too for member length of stay, member reactivation to give them a free upgrade to a strap or whatever it is. All those support the one thing that our primary focus is on. So if we're trying to make the most revenue possible about all those, we're going to end up dropping them all and doing a crappy job. So the genius is deciding not only what you can do as a person, but what you as Game Time Fitness or Synergy Athletics, if that company had a vote and they were sitting in the meeting with you, what would Synergy decide on this topic? And it's all to feed the machine.
You're exactly right. And that's a great way to put that, is find out what you do really well, and then everything else that you decide to do in your business should support that one thing that you do really, really well. And if it's something that, and like you said, we've done and tried, and one of the biggest examples that I'll give you, right early on when we first started, we got an opportunity with the local hospital, and to do a kind of a partner, and they wanted us to come over there. So that meant that I had to supply another coach to come over there, to go over there and teach classes, and teach sessions with some minimal equipment that they had over there. And quite honestly, it didn't work out very well. It used resources. I could have had that coach, coming to our facility training here. We just got our hands into too many baskets at that point, because we saw an opportunity out there that we wanted to take advantage of, and we were able to flip that and say, hey, this is not really working. We're giving our resources out to here, and we really want to bring people into our facility. So instead of us coming over there and coaching classes, I know you guys have equipment, but how about we just do some programming for you guys and send it out to you, and then have your members that are interested come over here, and we'll give, we let them have kind of a hospital discount, and things of that nature. So we were able to flip that into a little bit better situation. But it really taught me early on that, just because an opportunity is out there and it looks great, it might not be the right fit for the facility at the time. And if it doesn't support what you just said, if it doesn't support your main product, then it probably is going to be best to, figure out what that lifespan is, and then cut it when you need to, for sure.
And Drew and I are sharing experience and trying to get you a little bit of a shortcut, because same thing. I had an opportunity with a local hospital which said, hey, come over. We have some equipment to train our people. We'll fill the sessions. It didn't quite work out the way either of us envisioned. We had the same opportunity with the bank shortly later, that they built their own facility. And with that lesson learned, we use what Drew was talking about. We give them a discount. We give them an employee rate. We give them the first month free to come over and try out as a member of that company. So they're sending us people all the time, but we're not sending our resources out in our labor hour and taking someone away from a full gym and putting them in a 5-person class at a business where people have to be available right at the end of their schedule. Other things could include, for us, and this could be defined differently for everyone on the call, but we want to run our one thing very well. It takes up our entire schedule during the day. If someone said, hey, I want to do a HIIT class, or why don't you add a yoga class, or why don't you add a kids party weekend, or things like that have all been recommended to us, it would take away too many resources from us focusing and being able to grow our company. So what you focus on is what you'll be able to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very similar experiences. We get questions like that all the time. And it always looks great. And, it does make you think a little bit, but at the end of the day, what's best for Synergy Athletics, what's best for Game Time? Does that meet, the one thing that's your bread and butter, and does it support that? If it doesn't, then, it just unfortunately doesn't make sense, and you can move on to the next thing.
Drew, excellent job today. I appreciate you coming on the call, and I won't call it for sure. We'll see if Andy listens this long into the podcast and he makes a comment on it to get an official review. But I'm very impressed, and I'm very fortunate that he was able to connect our dots. Drew and we were able to talk, and checked out the website, and it's all very impressive. You can check out Drew's stuff. It's GameTimeSportsTN.com. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the website's still in the works a little bit. Gonna do some changes to that in the upcoming year. But GameTimeSportsTN.com. Game Time Sports on Instagram and Facebook, and Massey Strength Coach on Instagram, and Drew Massey on Facebook. You can get all of our. We're sharing everything out there, so though you can look us up there.
Yeah, we could do a whole separate episode on website stuff, and we probably will, and maybe I'll have you back again in a year. But what I think you're doing is the right way, which is you get the words right on the website, and then you get a fancy designer instead of the other way around. You try to make it all pretty, but it doesn't say anything. But whole nother podcast, Drew.
Right.
So,
absolutely. Let's do it.
Highly recommend checking out Drew's material. I'm going to wrap it up and stay on the call, Drew, because I want to thank you again in person, but I also want to thank the listeners to the Level Up Your Gym podcast. You can learn more and get our free resources at levelupyourgym.com, where we send you a video every morning to your inbox. It's like a gym business masterclass delivered right to you, 3 to 5 minutes each day. So thanks for listening, and thank you, Drew, for being on the show.